I'd like to introduce Grainne from Ireland, who has multiple sclerosis. Welcome, Grainne.
Thank you, Linda. Good to talk to you.
So, could you tell us a bit about your MS, what it was like, and what led to your diagnosis?
Okay, my MS really, I only became aware of my MS in 2005 when I was 45. When I was doing a mini marathon in the city that I live in. Mm-hmm. And when I was training for it, I noticed tingling in my legs. And then the day of the marathon, for some reason, it's like everything went wrong. I was doing the marathon, trying to speed walk, of course, needless to mention. And my legs started to go. And my eye, I had had optic neuritis in 1998, but it was never linked with MS.
Right.
They just said I had a breakdown of my immune system in 1998. But that day, my eye went, my legs started wobbling, and I was feeling like I was walking on unsafe, unsure ground. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know what had happened to me. A friend came up behind me and said to me, "Oh, are you okay?" And I said, "I don't know what's wrong with me." So then I went to a doctor, and luckily I was very lucky in that my doctor got me through the system, and I was diagnosed within months of having MS because I had an MRI done.
So up until that point, other than the optic neuritis?
I was a very fit woman, yeah. I walked. I didn't actually drive until I was diagnosed with MS. I walked everywhere. Mm. So it was such a shock to me then, not to be able to walk, because the attack in 2005 really knocked my walking ability down to, I was only walking about 1,500 to 2,000 steps a day. Mm. And then now it's reduced. Well, obviously over time it reduced itself really, you know.
So what impact did it have on you being given the label of having multiple sclerosis?
I kind of knew anyway, because I had obviously gone online and I ticked all the boxes for MS. And when my doctor said to me, "I don't know whether to send you to a vein man or to send you to a neurologist," I said, "Send me to a neurologist because I have MS." And she said, "You'd be ridiculous." And I said, "I'm telling you I have MS." So then I went to see a neurologist, and I had the MRI. I didn't have the lumbar puncture. I just refused to have it. I said, "Look, you've enough evidence in an MRI. Work with that. And if you're saying I have MS, fine." I think my brother's reaction would have been, "Well, you don't have an inoperable brain tumour, so move on from it," which was, I probably found a bit coarse on the day, but it was probably very practical advice for me, really. And with regard to thinking about the label, I didn't know much about MS when I was diagnosed with MS, and I now know why. Because people who have MS, a lot of them don't tell people they have MS. So I wouldn't have been aware of people conversing about MS as an illness. I knew one person who had it, and he didn't talk about it. Mm-hmm. So I couldn't understand that side of it, which was interesting. But now I think it's great to hear people talking about multiple sclerosis and what it is. Yeah. You know, I think it should be talked about more often. I think it should be more out there and open. And I would have seen it on Tesco shopping bags. That's all I knew about MS, was that they were sponsoring. And everywhere I looked, but because I actually, even though I didn't know that much about MS, I had a fear of getting MS. I've had that fear for 20 years before that. Because when my mother was in hospital once, there was a woman across from her, a young woman who had MS, and she couldn't eat her apple. And I was saying to my mother, "What's wrong with that woman?" And she said, "She's got MS." And I said, "What is it?" She told me. And then I said, "Has she got children?" And she said, "Yes." And I was kind of upset to see a young woman like that not being able to eat an apple and having children, and knowing I had children myself, and knowing what it's like to try and rear a child and the difficulty, as a healthy woman. Yeah. Not to mind having a woman that couldn't even eat an apple for herself that day in the hospital. But now I know she was probably in the middle of an attack. But, it's so as a result of that, all my life I feared getting MS.
Okay.
Which is weird. It was the only illness I feared.
And then you got it. How unfair is that?
It could have been worse. My sister was diagnosed with a brain tumour at the same time. Well, a month after I was diagnosed with MS, she was diagnosed with a brain tumour. A few months. So she died of the brain tumour. So I didn't die, so I'm kind of thinking, well, look, I'm still alive. And
so how did you find out about LDN?
I went online because I looked at the options of medication. There was interferons or Copaxone were the options really I was given, and I wanted to go online. I wanted to know what they were about, what they were going to do, and when I saw what the interferons could do to my immune system, I decided Copaxone was the one that I would favoured, and my children wanted to see me taking something. I have 4 children, so they were looking to me, obviously, Mum, get treatment. And I was like, well, there is no treatment really, but you can take the stuff that might work. And LDN came my way. So, I'm now even thinking, well, frankly, I'm very lucky. I'm still working full-time.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
But how did you find LDN?
Online. I went online looking at options, and then I found the LDN, Low Dose Naltrexone.org website, and from that then I read and I watched some stuff on YouTube, and then I bought the book Up the Creek with a Paddle.
Yeah.
And I didn't read it. I bought the book on Amazon and left it in a bookcase, and I had sourced kind of people in Ireland like Dr. Pat Crowley, people like that, Patrick Crowley, all these people I kind of knew, and I knew about the chemist in Galway, Brendan Quinn, and, so I had kind of Irish information on it, but I didn't do anything. I had mentioned it to a neurologist a few years ago, and he seemed unkeen to discuss it with me, and said, well, your only options are interferons or Copaxone. So I kind of backed away from it, but then I had a bad attack a few months ago, and I read the book, and I said, right, I got to get my S in gear, and I went to see Pat Crowley. That was only 4 weeks ago.
Right.
And within 12 hours, my life changed, literally.
Wow.
Because when I went up, like my doctor, I went to see her the previous Wednesday, and I was in a bad place, and I just felt my physical body was just in bits, and my mental health would have been in bits, and I just felt miserable. And I went to see her on Wednesday, and she was offering me painkillers, and I said, you know how I feel about drugs and my kidneys and my liver. I don't like taking tablets. And she was like, well, these ones aren't too bad, and try them. And then I went to see Pat Crowley on the Monday. I was out of work sick, and I went to see Pat on the Monday. I'd watched all the conference videos on YouTube, and I'd heard what everybody had said. So I was fully informed at that stage. And I went to see Pat, and he gave me the prescription, and then I went to Kilkenny and I got it made up, and I took it that night, and I woke up the following morning and I was shocked because I hadn't woken up 5 times during the night in pain trying to straighten my legs. And I was smiling. I said, I didn't wake up 5 times last night, and it's continued like that. I don't wake up at night. I'm still on 3 milligrams, and I have a slight stiffness that's beginning to develop now over the last week because I've been keeping a diary. And now I'm beginning to think, okay, maybe now that's my body is leveled off at that 3, so I need the extra 1.5. So it's like the Pat is saying to go up to 4.5 now in another week. So I can see now why.
Really good. I mean, you've had such a remarkable improvement.
It's incredible, Linda. The second day, I was out of work now, as I say, and I don't take time off work. Like when I was diagnosed with MS, I took a half day, and I went to hospital for the steroids over Christmas. Because it was December I was diagnosed, so I waited for my Christmas holidays and went in and had the steroids. So I don't miss time. But anyway, I missed 2 weeks from work. This last attack was so bad. So, as I say, I'd gone from being very low to waking up on Tuesday morning, smiling. But I didn't wake up 5 times last night. And I came downstairs and my daughter looked at me and she could see in me that I was in a different place than I had been the day before. And the following morning, when I came down the stairs, I was coming down so fast. No, that fast to me wouldn't be fast to somebody else, but I felt I was coming down so fast that I was joyous, and I kind of, in my head, I said, I ran into the kitchen and I looked at Aubrey, and Aubrey, my daughter, looked at me and she said, oh my God, I thought it was Tommy. She thought it was somebody else coming down the stairs because she couldn't believe the pace that I came down the stairs. No, I haven't got, my balance is still a bit out and there's still things, but I am quite accepting of that as long as I'm not in pain all night. Because when I got to the stage where if I went to bed, I didn't sleep because of the pain. If I went to sleep, I got pain. So I try and keep myself awake rather than go through the pain.
Yeah.
But I don't have that now.
Well, that is really good. And let's hope that you continue and, the coming months you'll be able to get stronger and stronger.
Absolutely, yeah. That's exactly the way I feel, And even if I level at this, and I said to my children, even if I only got the last few weeks out of it, the feeling that I got that feeling back of that I would say my mental health improved, and I didn't realize the level of pain that I was living with. Like, I wouldn't have called it pain. I would have said, oh geez, yeah, my legs drive me mental sometimes and things like that, but I was actually in pain 24 hours a day, and I didn't realize it. So at work, my focus wouldn't have been as good. Because there were times I would have to stand up at the computer because my legs were driving me so crazy when I was sitting down, so I'd be banging my leg on the ground and I'd be trying to work. Do you imagine what I'm like to work with? So you know what I mean? And I'm smiling more and I'm a happier person because... And I read someplace about somebody else who had taken LDN, and she said, I woke up one morning and I felt somebody switched on a light in my head. Or was it somebody said it at some of those conferences? That's exactly how I felt on Wednesday morning. I said the world was a brighter place. It was just, I was able to handle a lot more than of stress level than I would have been able to handle 2 days beforehand. And then my doctor rang me, and she wouldn't prescribe LDN for me because I asked her. And she rang me on the Wednesday, and she said, Grainne, how are you? I'm really worried about you. And I said, I'm great. And she says, what? And I said, I went to Kilkenny on Monday to another doctor and I got LDN and I'm fantastic. And I said, if you won't believe how good I am. And I think now I'm going to try and get round her to prescribe it for me. And maybe, move it a little bit, get my little bit. Like I got a chemist here, Sam McCauley's, which is a big pharmacy group in Ireland, to fill the prescription for me for the capsules.
Right.
Which was great to be able to get it easily, So that made a big difference. And there's a company here in Ireland now making up the capsules. They're only an hour down the road from Cork City, actually. They make up the capsules in 3 and 4.5 milligram capsules. So it's easy. No, it's great to be able to, like my local pharmacy can get them now for me within 24 hours and things.
That's excellent. Well, thank you very much for sharing your story with us, and we do hope that you continue improving.